tardes.
Good afternoon and welcome. Now we're going to talk about a very interesting topic because we are always talking about eliminating marine waste and to rescue the sea. But what happens when we bring these waste to the land? Do we have to create the necessary network for a proper management and also the characterization of that waste? And we need to harmonize and get to know what is being done everywhere, especially in the case of islands, where waste management models are complex. Here we're going to analyze different cases of success cases with our participants, especially those related to fisheries. Our participants are Mr. Pedro Delgado, coming from the Government of Madeira, from the Secretariat of Fisheries. We have Almudena Hernandez Cabrera, from the Santa Cruz de Tenerife Port Authority, with 20 years of experience in this area, comprising 6 ports. Mr. Rubén Rodríguez Alonso, who is a biologist and specialist in marine waste in the north of Spain. And finally, Andrea Ruzzo, who is the executive director of the EcoAlf Foundation, working on this marine litter in the Mediterranean and also in the Asia-Pacific area. And with no further ado, I will now pass the floor to them, who are the experts who will tell us very interesting things. So, Pedro, please.
Como queráis. Ahí o...
So, good afternoon. My name is Pedro Delgado, and I work at the fish markets of the self-governing region of Madeira, which is the place where the fish is unloaded. In addition to this, which is related to unloading fish, we're also working on the collection of marine waste coming from fishing activities. As in these images, you can see the deposits we use to collect the waste that is collected by the fishing vessels when they bring the fish to our markets. The type of waste that is brought by fishermen are not differentiated waste that following the activities carried out on the vessels. Some vessels already have these activities included, so separate glass, plastic, or some other fishing gears waste.
As artes de pesca em fim de vida e também aquelas que são pescadas passivamente.
We also have specific deposits to collect fishing gears that are at their end of their lifespan and which are not going to be used anymore. And also some specific containers to collect the oil coming from the vessels and also the batteries. And to collect batteries, as I said. And also, in addition to these specific containers for different types of waste, we have also specific containers for filter tips. Not only the fact that we have these containers is important, but also the fact that those who are in charge of the fishing vessels need to be aware of the fact that they need to deliver all the waste that is collected on their vessels after their fishing activities. So we tried that those people in charge of the vessels join the ocean lit. And if they meet this requirement to deliver all the waste when they are coming with their fish, they are certified as members of the project. Two years ago, we started this project, and since then we have collected around 3 tons of waste related to fishing gears. In addition to this differentiated waste, we have also collected in these 2 years around 42 tons of waste, including fridges, and so oil from the vessel engines and other type of oils. We have also We have also carried out different training activities and awareness raising campaigns, and in this sense, and in the last 2 years we have trained 130 people in this type of activities. Thank you very much.
Ahora vamos a escuchar.
Now we are moving on to Almudena Hernandez, coming from the Tenerife Port Authority. Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you very much to the organization for inviting us to be present here today. I'm going to tell you our reality. We are not going to hide anything. We're going to be pretty honest on the problems coming after the collection of waste in the ports, especially on those managed by the Port Authority of Santa Cruz de Tenerife, including Granadilla, La Estaca, or Santa Cruz de Tenerife. Marine waste is a global problem, as we've seen today, and it's not just a problem for the port. The management of the fished waste is unintentioned, as we have seen in the recent regulation. regardless of this, the complexity of island territories, and especially in the peripheral islands, where we have a double cost of insularity, this usually leads to a lack of managers to meet certain requirements, and this also implies a lack of competence and an increase of cost, not only because of the lack of cost, but also because we need to bring those waste from these peripheral islands to Tenerife and then to transport them to the mainland Spain. So then we have a specific element in our port, and since we haven't been able to sign certain conventions coming from national legislation, we are assuming certain types of waste from our budget. So we need to raise awareness at the social and port level, and especially in the field of fisheries in our and sports, sea sports too. We need to work on raising awareness. And another aspect that cannot be denied and that cannot be ignored is the lack of human resources at the port. This is a fact, and we have little time every day, and we can do everything we can. We do our best. Regarding the infrastructure, we have limited spaces to locate clean points to manage waste in general, or in the case of marine waste in particular. And another aspect that is also common to all public administrations is the act for hiring in the public sector, which is a battle horse. So every time we want to contract a service, everything becomes more complex and everything is delayed and everything becomes more and more difficult. And this also includes the services related to the collection of waste. So what are we doing how are we trying to improve this? So now we are trying to improve the infrastructure and trying to improve as well the different green points in our port through the project Smart Green Point, where we will locate those unintentionally fished waste. And we're also working through the MARPOL Convention in order to try to meet all legal requirements. And also we are creating an environmental conduct code that it will be updated this year and will be approved sometime before year end. This also includes a guide of good practices, and we will work on raising awareness with the port community. We'll give also in workshops and conferences to train and raise awareness. Since 2014, we have the ISO 14001 standard, which is leading our guiding our work, so to become excellent in environmental management. We also work in preventing in the creation or generation of waste and many other activities. That's all. Thank you very much. Our next speaker will be Rubén Rodríguez. Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for inviting us and for the great management of this project. I will just give you some highlights about the Spanish strategy for fishing marine trash, marine litter, that we have been developing in the last years. Recently, in Spain, as you well know, we have developed different types of projects in this field. Here you can see a map for fishing waste in the year 2022, in which have been distributed across the Spanish coast, and this implies around 65 ports. This, as I said, means that we have 10 types of projects with different causes, and some of them are promoted by public or private entities. And mainly, they have a common point, which is collecting the litter from the sea, but some of them just collect data and stop there. And this creates a type of heterogeneity that forced the creation of a common framework aimed at mainly creating a framework document to regulate this activity. This is effective for different fisheries, from big trawling companies to more artisanal fishing activities. So we needed to have a common framework for all these actors, and that's why we held different meetings with all the stakeholders in this litter fishing activities, including port authorities, public administrations, technicians, project technicians, as we are, or even some waste managers. Through the development of this project, we had a change of scenario as new regulations were launched for ports. And this created, as I said, a new scenario as it assimilates from a legal perspective to MARPOL. So this places all the interest in the fishermen, and also it places this obligatority in the hands of port authorities to report the data they collected on the different litter that is collected and unloaded at the ports. So these data must be transferred to the Ministry of Ecological Transition, and then this is then transferred to the European Commission. In this project, following the execution regulation that is established therein, we have created kind of a bridge between the port authorities and the state. Within the Spanish territory, we have two big archipelagos. This is something that you are all aware of. And these territories are complex, although they also share some similarities, as Almudena has just mentioned. But there are also some significant differences. Here in the Canary Islands, trawling is not a common issue, while in the Balearic Islands it is a common practice. Some of these trawling vessels are participating in litter collection activities, which can collect up to 1 ton of marine litter per year. It's not enough to have a self-managed line, because then they cannot be managed properly. So certain studies say that these waste must be treated individually, and this is not the case in the Balearic Islands at the moment. So now on the islands we're working with municipalities, and these waste is then transferred to landfills where they are managed. This is a case of El Hierro, which we would like to highlight, because the challenge is in finding in situ, on-site solutions. And there we saw in El Hierro that the fishermen collect, and some of the litter they collect, floating litter that they collect, are then reused by fishermen. And this is an interesting line. So maybe we should get deeper in this. Thank you very much. Andrea, the floor is yours. Good afternoon, everyone, and I would like to thank the organization for bringing us here today. My name is Andrea Russo, and I work at the Ecoal Foundation, which is a private organization working since 2015 against ocean pollution and trying to seek for a solution within the circular economy model. Just to give you some general data, we started working here in 2015 in 45 ports, and in the last years we have expanded throughout the Mediterranean, and now we are working in France, Spain, Italy, and Greece in 71 ports. So today I would like to share with you our experience in Greece and in Thailand. It is another country where we developed our project between 2017-2020 to see any potential challenges or solutions found and to compare them. So now let's move on to Greece. And there we are working with Enalia, which is our local partner, and it's a Greek association. I've been working with them since 2020 in 15 ports. These are the general data of the project to date, and these are the number of boats, vessels, and fishermen we are collaborating with. But maybe you need some interesting facts about the country. So bearing in mind that Greece, as you know, is mainly based, and its economy is mainly based on tourism, and it has many small islands with more than one port, and in most of those islands, they don't have waste management systems. So most waste are transferred to landfills, and they are filled up to the top. So the solution to this problem was created ad hoc, and we are trying, in order to recycle this waste, what our partner is doing, separating that waste, it's putting plastic aside and then compressing it within the island so they could reduce the volume of the waste. And since there isn't any kind of transport lines taking those materials to Athens, where this waste is managed, we have created an alliance with cargo and freight lines to get a lower price, so this waste can be transferred to Athens to be recycled and manipulated. So this is the great feat that we have to carry out to guarantee that this waste is recycled in mainland Greece. Another part that also interesting at this point, so you can see the very low incidence that recycling can happen there, is that maybe the containers must be hidden in ports because it doesn't look nice to tourists. So sometimes we have just to paint them and to hide them behind posters, for instance. It's kind of a juggling exercise. This is one of the examples I wanted to bring you here today. And now I'll show you another pilot program that is a replica of the project we are developing in Spain at the moment. And we are talking now about a completely different context. In Thailand, we just checked the statistics today, Thailand is the 10th country in terms of contribution to sea pollution. And so we have this idea of rivers full of trash in Thailand. Well, this is mainly due to the great difference between the rural areas of the country and the cities. For instance, in Bangkok, there is indeed a system for the management of waste, but it's kind of effective, I would say. But in rural areas, they don't have access to such kind of systems. So most rural areas simply just dump the trash into the rivers and then they get to the sea. And what we have here is a great difference and a great inequality between rural areas and the cities. So the solution we found here, given this lack of structure, was creating a project to raise awareness among citizens in alliance with our local partner in order to call volunteers and scuba divers to collect the waste, to make the problem visible, and to show the Thai citizens that recycling is an option. So we have two different models, but I think it's also interesting to bring it here and share it with you so you can have an idea of what we're doing around. And then I'll finish with this. Thank you.
Bueno, hemos querido ser muy ágiles.
So we wanted to be pretty agile and to make presentation times shorter because we want now to start a debate among all of us. So we all speak about this topic, and I ask you to make any potential questions you may have.
¿verdad? Abrir fuego.
Yeah, this is scary indeed. Yeah. No, it's not scary at all. I love it. Thank you very much and congratulations. Could you please introduce yourself? My name is Dacil. I wanted to ask a question to Pedro Delgado from Madeira. Maybe the interpreter is there. She's there. Since he's coming from a to an archipelago that is pretty similar to ours, with a very similar fishing industry. I'll just wait for the interpreter now. Okay. As I said, he's coming from a very similar archipelago to ours with a similar fishing fleet. I was wondering, how do you control the unload of such waste created by the vessels in their working day at the port? I mean, is there any kind of system through which you can check that everything that is brought to the port is 100% of what is produced on those working days or that season in the ocean, or is it just part of that waste that can be stored on board? Because the problems that are attached to the vessels, to the fishing vessels, is that they can't store these waste because they don't have enough room on the vessel because they cannot take it to the port.
Não existe nenhum sistema de controlo do que entra a bordo das embarcações.
Isn't any kind of control of what gets on board the vessels. What we have is training that is given to the fishermen that of how they can reduce the level of the waste. For instance, a packet of milk can be reduced, so they know how to make the best use of their space on board.
En las embarcaciones, por ejemplo, y pone el ejemplo del paquete de leche, que un paquete de leche tiene un cierto volumen, pero si se ha consumido, pues el paquete se puede aplastar y reducir, de modo que es difícil que se vaya a producir más residuo que lo que originalmente se introdujo en el barco.
Nós preocupamos muito com
We also are very concerned about the marine litter. Of course, we are concerned about the marine litter, but fishermen are those who should have the greater interest, because if they don't contribute to keep the sea clean, then the fishing activity can be affected, which is the main objective. So what we're doing now is providing training activities or training courses, and we try to complement them by incentives, such as the one I mentioned before, that those vessel members that are adhering to this pilot project that I mentioned before, Ocean Lit, then they are given a flag that certifies them as responsible people who are taking care of marine litter. And one more question related to this flag, this recognition you're talking about. In addition to being a flag, do they get any kind of benefit in the sale of their product? Another incentive, I forgot to mention this before, in which they are thinking and they haven't put it into practice, is to offer an exemption in some kinds of taxes in the market or in the auction, and the fishing auction for working. And of course,
transmitir de uma preocupação e transmitir que aquilo que é a fonte de rendimento dos pescadores, que é o peixe, pode estar comprometido com o lixo marinho. Essa que é a grande preocupação. E isso é que é a grande mensagem que temos que passar. Quando me refiro aqui num incentivo financeiro, nunca poderá ser aquilo que nos der, nós vamos retribuir de uma forma financeira. Poderá ser eventualmente pensado como um estímulo, como um prémio por uma embarcação que durante o ano trouxe mais lixo ou que se comportou melhor nestas matérias. Agora, neste momento, não está nada em prática.
At the moment, nothing has come to practice, but it's something that we have in mind. We always try to raise awareness among fishermen about how they are the first interested party and how fishing activities are their first source of income. So the better the quality of water, the better for themselves. But we don't have any kind of incentives yet.
Que tenho observado é que é muito importante o trabalho que é feito em terra. Ou seja, ter um espaço limpo, um espaço onde as embarcações estão a descarregar sem ter lixo acumulado, sem ter redes de pesca abandonadas com um cheiro desagradável por aí fora, isso é importante para os pescadores. Portanto, quando chegam à terra também se aperceberem de que todo o espaço envolvente que também está limpo.
There is a point is really one of our concerns is that fishermen, when they get to the market, they can find, when they come to unload their fish, they find clean spaces where they can leave their waste or the waste they have collected that doesn't smell badly, for instance. And this is what we are doing at the moment.
Desta formação aos pescadores, nós também temos ao longo do ano visitas de escolas, de crianças que vão ver o pescado, vão ver as descargas de peixe. E aproveitamos e também falamos neste problema. Portanto, também estamos a sensibilizar as gerações mais novas também para esta problemática.
And in addition to these training sessions with fishermen, we usually receive and welcome school groups to witness the activities we carry out there, and we take advantage of those moments to raise awareness among kids about how necessary it is to take good care of the sea. Thank you very much. I had a second question for the Port of Tenerife that is related to this line, because you're also managing the Port of Los Cristianos. I wanted to ask you if to date, if you have this clean space at the port to manage this marine litter at the port of Los Cristianos, or to separate the litter coming from vessels, which are two different things. Yes, in the case of Los Cristianos, we have two green points. In theory, according to our royal decree 2011, we should subscribe different conventions with the fishermen associations, so they don't need to pay for the tax. At the moment, they are not paying for that, but in exchange, they have two green points that are being paid by the Port Authority. There, this waste generated by vessels are deposited there, as well as the waste generated by sport activities, including hazardous waste created by sports vessels and fishing vessels, and also of different activities related to other activities carried out by the fishermen, especially when they are beached, when the vessels are beached. And what we are working now is to start working on segregating the marine litter. So it is all now put into the green points, but we're not differentiating marine litter from the rest of waste that they find in the sea. So traditionally, the Port Authority has been collected trash or litter, such as, for instance, the one we get when we get dingy boats coming from Africa or dead animals, but we don't have specific mechanisms to separate this unintentionally fished waste. And now we are starting to work on that, because we have to report this, according to law, to the ministry. Any other questions? Hello. Thank you for your presentations. I'm Pedro Fernandez from MedWaves, and also I'm a member of IBAM. My question is for Andrea. Some time ago, EcoAlf was working in the south of the Mediterranean. I think it was in Morocco. And in your map, we could see that you're working very actively in the north of the Mediterranean. But are you planning to work in the southern part of the Mediterranean, or have you encountered any kind of difficulties to work there? Have you tried at least? Thank you, Pedro, for your question. Yes, we at EcoAlf, we are aware that the marine pollution is a global problem, but we are moving from country to country because it's easier to manage if we do it in this way. But we are very open to work in other countries. We're currently studying what countries we can get into, and before we do so, we carry out a study to see the capacity we could have to interact with the fleet, with the fishing fleet, and the country's ability to manage the waste. So we have different challenges for different countries. We haven't started working in Morocco or any other countries because we are looking for the local context and partners to be in touch with the different stakeholders in those areas. Indeed, all these countries that have problems facing related to waste management, makes all the sense in the world to work with them, and they are a great opportunity to develop other projects related to circular economy, to reuse or to give a second life to that waste. We don't have a list. In the past, we did speak about Morocco. It is an open option, I must say. Especially, we are also focused on the Egyptian coast. We have held different conversations there, but we are now waiting to find the local context. But I am completely open to listen to you if you have any contact in those areas. Any other question? Yes? Hello, my name is Vicente. I'm coming from Calvan, from the Vertido Cero Association. And very briefly, because it's a very long story, because I have realized or even speaking within the association, the quantities that are being collected are very little. But this is what traditionally has happened with all waste. So the beginnings are hard, but are necessary, and I encourage you to continue working in this sense. It doesn't matter if you collect 1 ton or 100 ton, because what you're doing is raising awareness. This is what happened with all of us. I remember when we started placing containers, many of you are very young, so you can't remember, when we started getting containers in the street, people said that we were deteriorating the urban space. And now we can see not only 1 or 2 containers, but 4 or 5. So we need to start and be very perseverant and very persistent to achieve our goals. I also understand, because we all share this awareness, that you need to give the waste the best use. But sending it to a landfill, and it's better that, and I disagree with this, it's better to have it in the landfill rather than in the sea. I strongly say I don't agree with this, but I have to say at the same time that landfills are not ready to manage this. And I know how difficult it is to manage this or to improve the situation given the current legislation. And I disagree on one point. You said that a beautiful Greek island placing a container is something that goes against aesthetics, but I think it's something that must be seen. They need to see that we're making an effort. They need to recognize there is a problem, and sometimes we need to see that the waste that the tourists create end up in the sea, and they need to be collected. So I think that citizens need to see the truth in front of them, because at the end of the day, those marine litter, the one we see in the city, are being thrown away by people. And we need to reward those who are more conscious about this, and to show, I think we should be more aggressive, verbally speaking, and in the way to show people what the consequences are, and to see who is taking care of the situation. I fully agree with you. But the problem is when you don't have the option, because while working there, we're a very small organization, and I have to wonder, well, do I have to place a container to collect this litter, or maybe I'll just leave the island with no service? And for me, the option is that this container should be visible, because especially it also creates some collective consciousness. But if I'm not allowed, what should I do? We are starting our work there because those islands don't have that service. As an individuals, our organization have managed to create a small system for waste management. And after a year, I can tell the public administrations what to do with our little effort. So it's a way to show that things can happen and to have the results. Because I agree with you once more, we need to create awareness and to show the problem too. But we are just proving that things can be done. This is our main goal. More questions? Catherine?
Catherine Barrett from Ireland. So my question is to Alamundo from the ports in Tenerife. So you referenced the new directive, the Port Reception Facilities Directive, for keeping the marine litter, but it's also required to stream the waste fishing gear from fishermen as they retire their gear. So I'm just wondering what's your strategy around that part of that piece of legislation. I suppose for context, in our program for Fishing for Litter, we do a waste characterization of the material. Ours is seafloor litter that our fishermen would bring ashore, and it's up to 60% would be fishing gear that's either been abandoned or lost. And the two are working with one, you have to work with the other. So I'm just wondering what's your strategy around that retired or waste fishing gear?
Okay. Nosotros ahora mismo no.
Currently, we don't have the necessary data. We don't have data related to the segregation of waste, because we're not separating it from the rest of waste that is being separated or collected at the port. So we will start now segregating or differentiating this type of waste, because it's a global waste. It's not a waste deriving from the port activity. We will collect it for free at the port as it's established by law, but it's not a port waste. So it's going to be treated differently from the experience of other ports. So we are giving the fishermen some big bags, and they keep them inside the vessels, and they put all the fishing gears in those bags, and this is then left at the port that will be managed by specific staff to be defined. And then we'll separate it within the 5 or 6 types of waste that are established and described in regulations. Maybe in the future we can find funds, European funds, to get better systems for segregation, or to hire or to collaborate with different organizations. That would be great. But this is the reality we have at the moment. I think Ruben can give more details about the rules and the regulations. In line with what Almudena has just said, when working with the ministry, in line with the national strategy for the fishing of waste, and following the new European and Spanish regulations, we talk about different levels of reporting obligatoryness. So there is a level to separate fishing gears, and there is a reporting level that specifies or differentiates those fishing gears from marine litter. So when developing this reporting instrument, this has been done following this execution ruling, this execution regulation. It is possible to report, each port can report the specific data, including the obligatory level, which is the level, the amount of an intentionally fished litter, as it's called in Spanish regulation, and it's the total volume, the one that must be reported by the port. And then the tool allows us to give or to specify the different levels. So what we see here is what Almudena has just mentioned. So we need to bring the litter to the land and to separate it from the rest of waste. And from there, we need to work harder in order to try to give more detail, a greater level of detail, to meet the requirements of the rules.
No, o sea, en general no se está teniendo datos sobre las cantidades de basura marina de fondos pescados.
Okay, so it's certainly true that there are projects like the one that Andrea spoke about, and Ruben also on Circular Seas, Ignacio as well, who is with us in the room today. There are certain one-off projects that do gather data beforehand based on the Spanish reporting system, which is quite basically a simplification of the OSPA system, both the items, number of items, and the weights as well. So we base it on that. So now let's take a look at how we can integrate the methodology across our projects in this new national strategy with the aid of the port authorities, because they have the reporting obligation to the national governments. One other remark, I would like you to have certain peace of mind about the fact that we do manage waste in the way that it needs to be done, and separation is done as should be done in terms of segregated data on what we are managing. No, we therefore are separating out the port's waste from marine litter. Thank you. Any more questions? I certainly do have some questions because I'm very curious because I think that you've all spoken about an issue that I find extremely fascinating. Now, something that I'm always being asked, and I would like to ask you about this. In your projects, how involved are fishers? Fishermen and fisherwomen highly involved or less? Let's begin with Pedro.
Nos últimos anos tem havido maior envolvimento da classe pescatória nesta matéria, principalmente pela quantidade, no fundo, de resíduos que começa a chegar à terra vindo das embarcações de pesca. Agora, logicamente que é um longo trabalho que ainda tem que ser efetuado e certamente que algumas coisas, como é óbvio, como em todos os setores, também não correm bem e que por essa razão terão que ser melhoradas no futuro.
Há nível de...
There certainly is a level of involvement, as we could well imagine, because of the greater amount of waste that are reaching our shores. But we have to certainly work more, and there's much work for us still to do. And you in the port, what are your feelings about this? Well, I think that there has been a process. Now, first of all, waste was managed in such a way, and then we had the recycling points, which meant that people certainly went to the recycling points. I don't know where it ended up in the past, but you can well imagine. So now that we have the recycling points, there are issues related to separation, awareness raising is needed more amongst fisher folk, know how to separate out hazardous from non-hazardous waste as well. In the fishing sector, there is a lack of knowledge about these issues, but certainly things are improving, but a lot of work needs yet to be done, monitoring, outreach, so that we can improve matters. Ruben? Okay. As we've heard, it is a major sector with many different sensibilities, but obviously it's going to be tough. But we need to raise awareness of the litter generated by fishing, and as Vicente said, as soon as one person becomes involved, then this creates a knock-on effect. And Almudena spoke about this, when they come into the port, if the right facilities are being created, then they can leave the waste on land, so therefore it's about motivating them, and they play their role, but it is part of a chain, and we don't want the links in the chain to be missing. And then the question is asked whether we should provide them with some kind of compensation for bringing in their fishing gear. And what we see is that there's a lack of knowledge about what is happening in the general terms. Well, some are certainly more involved with others. In our port, we have the fishers fully aware, so therefore we need to empty the containers more now than ever. So that's a sign of positive intent. But we also have to reward them for the work that they've done. We need to raise the awareness of what they're doing, raise their profile, because it is part of an entire process, a feedback mechanism where positive effects are created by the good work that's done by all. At the end of the day, the sea is a resource. If they're not going to remove the waste from the sea, then they're going to end up polluting the sea ever more. And so the fishermen are going to say, well, I've been fishing for 3 days and I haven't seen a sight or sound of any fish, therefore I need to clean up these oceans. And it, pretty much in line with what Ruben was saying, our project took off because they came to us. voluntarily. No, they're the ones that are implementing the program. We quite simply gave them the tools and they got to work. No, we understand that. No, naturally, you're the one that works in Spanish ports and with the fisher folk, and you know that we need to work with them. We have to treat them with care. We need to give them solutions. And as Ruben said, it is a sector of the economy that is often frowned upon. So therefore, what we need to do is raise awareness of what they're doing, make it more visible. No, it's not just about financial compensation. It's about communication. It's about showing society that the work that they do has great value. And also, I'm sure this is true in Spain as well, but there are ports in many countries of the world where there is a mix of different cultures because the fishermen come from different countries, different cultures. Then there is an even more negative view taken of them because they come here they steal our jobs, they come from the Southern Mediterranean to work instead of us. So I think that it's very important that we are there, that we can look at them on a case-by-case basis to raise awareness of the work that is being done by them and the fact that they're not exploiting us. They're not exploiting seas. They're going to be there to help us to clean our seas. Thank you so much. We've run out of time, but today's speakers are with us. We're going to have the coffee break. We'll have the lunch break as well tomorrow, and please feel free to approach them if you want. So obviously, there's many questions yet to be answered, but I hope that throughout the session of today and tomorrow, we'll be able to answer those questions. And it's good to see that we have the responsible bodies, the port authorities, and the port authorities have really had to take on a massive burden, but I'm sure that they'll be able to shoulder that burden. And I like what Pedro has said about his project. I knew nothing about it beforehand. And about how it is important to have two types of containers, end-of-life fishing nets and marine litter containers, because many people complain that it ends up mixing one with the other. We end up with a mishmash of different types of waste. So it's very important that we carry out this work. And we want to also have a clean and pleasant location for you to throw away your waste. But this happens not necessarily port authorities, but in the fishing auction markets, the fish markets, they leave them in a deplorable state. So it's nice to have a clean, pleasant area so that people can recycle and manage waste properly. So thank you to all, and well, let's carry on tomorrow. Thank you.